In this tutorial, we're going to be making round shades for LED light strings. For this project, you'll need two 22 by 28 inch black poster board. These are just a thick paper, a long roll of aluminum tape, also known as HVAC tape or duct tape, a pair of scissors, two writing implements, a piercing tool, and a bit of stiff cardboard for use as a template. You can also use a piece of your poster board. The main steps in this project are covering the poster board with the aluminum tape, cutting out your template for making the round shades using a ruler and your piercing implement, marking the round shade using the template onto the poster board, and then cutting the shade out with the scissors. Final step will be using a bit of tape to form the shape of the shade on the string light. This roll of duct tape is just less than 2 inches wide. The poster board is 22 inches wide, so we'll have 11 strips of the aluminum tape to cover the poster board completely. It's easiest to start out by unrolling your tape all the way across the board and cutting it to length before you tape it down. Once we do that, peel back an edge of the tape. What you want to do is peel back some of the paper backing. Carefully align your tape with the edge and align the entire strip of tape along the top edge for the first one here. And once you've got your line laid out, keep your aluminum tape aligned with the edge and roll it out all the way across. Once you have your first strip of tape laid out, go ahead and do it 10 more times and completely cover your poster board. This is how we'll make a template for cutting the shades. We want a 7-inch wide shade, which means we want to scribe a circle that has a radius of 3.5 inches. So let's take our ruler here, mark a spot at 0. This is going to be our pivot point. And then we're not going to mark at 7 inches. This would make an entire shade that was 14 inches across. Instead, we're going to mark at 3.5 inches, which will give us a shade that's 7 inches around. We also want a 1-inch circle in the center that our LED light bulb will fit through. We're not going to make a mark at 1 inch. We're going to make a mark at 1/2 inch. So now we have our template with our markings, 3 holes, one for the inner circle, one for the outer circle, and one for the pivot point. Take our punch tool, a sharp screwdriver like this, or any other pointy object. You want to make a hole large enough to fit the end of your pencil or pen through it so that you can mark on the poster board below. You can see when we fit the pencil through the hole, we can see the lead sticking out to the other side. Now here's a trick for finding the center of a circle. We know this is going to be about the midpoint. Our circle is going to be about this big around. Here's our pivot point. Here's our outside diameter. Somewhere in here, this is about 3.5 inches. So we'll just put it right here. Put the outside point here on the edge of your material, and then mark an arc on the pivot point. And then about in the middle of your arc, align the outside with the other edge 90 degrees away. Put your marker in the pivot point and make another arc. And the point where these two arcs cross, that is your center point for the circle. Put our pen through the pivot point and into that center that we just marked with these two arcs. Now, holding the pivot point steady, giving slight pressure outwards on the pen, on your marker, you can scribe a circle all the way around. Just like that. Now we have the circle scribed all the way around. The second thing we want to do while we have our center marked is scribe the inner circle out. We'll do the same process, holding the pivot point, and now we have the inner circle marked. The last thing we want to do is take a section of the circle out, much like a pie piece. This section will determine the angle of the shade as it bends down from the top out. We're going to form a cone with this once we've cut it all out. We have two options. We can make a 90-degree cut, so take this whole quarter of the circle out, or we can take a 45-degree cut and take 1/8 of the circle out. The 45-degree cut gives a broader shade, while the 90-degree cut gives a more focused light bouncing from the shade onto the whatever surface you're lighting below. I'm going to cut both out. Here are the marks for the 90-degree. Now let's create another circle right here next to it. We'll set the anchor point here on the outside, use our center point to make an arc. Take this to the outside, make a second arc here, and here's our center point. We can eyeball this to do the 45-degree, or we can make another measurement here. Measure halfway between the two 90-degree points, 2 3/8 to 2 1/2. And then we have the 45-degree cut. The quality and precision of the cuts you make around this circle will determine how good your shades end up looking. And there we have it. Two shades, one with a 45 and one with the 90-degree angle on. The last thing I'll want to do is apply a piece of tape and bend these two sides together so that they form a cone. You can use a bit of the aluminum tape, do that tape as well. But you can use packing tape, cellophane tape, anything that you want. These will be on the inside of the shade. I do recommend folding these back in half while you do the bending of the rest. As you start to move the outer two edges around, the rest of the shade will give a natural bend. Best results align the two edges out here. Start from this side to apply the tape. Then make sure your two inner edges are aligned. That tape down there. And then finish smoothing it out. If you want, you can apply a little extra tape out here as well, just to make that hold together as well as possible. And now you have a shade with the 90-degree. You can continue to bend it to make it a little more rounded as your preference. The 45-degree angle shade is a bit broader, requires less bending into shape. 45-degree angle shade is a bit wider, ends up coming out a bit wider there and a bit flatter in this angle. Let's take a look at how this looks on the string of lights. Here are a couple of bare bulbs on the LED light string. When they're turned on, we get a nice glow from them. These are twist to remove. So I'll go ahead and untwist this one. You can see the light bulb is a bit under an inch across at the base. So this is where we will run the light bulb through the base here in the less than an inch hole that we've created in the base of the shade. And when we screw the light back in, the light bulb itself holds the shade on. The same approach applies for the 90-degree shade. You can see we have a broad but controlled spill of light from the 45-degree angle shade, and an even more concentrated and bright light from the 90-degree shade. From light testing, I can say that the 90-degree shade is roughly 10 times as bright at 12 inches as the bare bulb, and the 45-degree shade is roughly 5 times as bright at 12 inches as the bare bulb. Overall, the paper shades for these lights are very safe. The entire light string only puts out 5 watts with this particular set, far less than it would take to heat up paper to ignition temperature. These plastic bulbs don't shatter and they don't get hot during use. And the aluminum tape on the shade is a good heat sink, so it keeps the paper from warming even more. But as in any instruction, be safe and weigh the risks